Time for our class to begin. We're in the study of Jeremiah. We're in lesson 6. We've gotten into the 21st chapter, and we've been looking at focusing in upon the character of the kings. We're going to be Jeremiah is going to be examining the kings that were the last 5 after Josiah before they went into captivity. He's going to deal primarily with Jehoiakim, who reigns some 11 years. But he mentions some others that we'll be studying. But I want us just to emphasize chapter 21 and verse 12, when he says, O house of David, thus saith Jehovah, execute justice in the morning, and deliver him that is robbed out of the hand of the oppressor, lest my wrath go forth like fire, and burn so that none can quench it, because of the evil of your doings. Notice verse 11, he's going to the house of the king of Judah. Rulers had a responsibility of ruling well in their capacity as a king. As we'll see this evening, that's not what's happening. And so we'll emphasize that in chapter 22 and verse 3, when he says, execute justice and righteousness, deliver them. And we're going to be looking at these particular kings. So we're glad that you're here. Have your Bibles open, and we'll have the questions on the overhead if you do not have an outline with you. Part of executing justice, we see in verse 3, he adds to it. Not only just, we want to deliver him that is robbed of the oppressor. Notice it says, out of the hand of the oppressor, and do no wrong. So he adds this, do no violence to the sojourner, the fatherless, nor the widow, neither shall shed innocent blood in this place. Well, people are innocent, their lives are being taken. You have the fatherless and widow. What are common about those two? David? They need help. They don't have anybody else. That's right. And a sojourner might not have anybody either. Needs somebody to stand up for them. But you'll see that, especially Jehoiakim, we're going to see in this chapter that he's not indeed one who could be counted on to do that. But as we look at these particular duties of the kings, question number 5, if we just start there, what were the duties of the king? We just answered that. What were the nations here as to the reason for Jerusalem being overthrown? Now let's add to this. He gives those conditions. And notice in verse 4, for if you do this thing indeed, then here's the positive. There enter in by the gates of the house kings, sitting upon the throne of David, riding in chariots on horses, he and his servants and his people. But if you will not hear these words, something's going to happen. What I want you to see in this 22nd chapter especially, and we'll try to emphasize this, what does he bring in sitting upon the throne of David, riding in chariots and horses? What Jeremiah does, he puts us in to the everyday life of the people, of the kings. What do they do when they come into the gates of Jerusalem? What would they be riding on? Chariots and horses. And if you start doing your job as a king, you're going to enjoy these things. It's going to be well with you if you do this. We'll see a little bit later, he will speak and infer to Josiah. And he'll infer some of the things that he speaks about. Start doing your justice in the morning. When do they offer their sacrifices? Early in the morning. When do they want to do justice? Let's do it at the gates. The gates are open, and life can continue with the king being kingly, enjoying what it means to be a king. The people could enjoy justice, sojourner, fatherless, the widows. They could be taken care of. And there won't be innocent blood shed. Life as a Jew in the city of Jerusalem will continue. It's not just we're a religious people, they were, but the sense of you could be like a king. And you can be people that don't have a lot of help. You will be helped. And where did it come from? It comes from the leadership of the kings. But if not, verse 5, I swear by myself, said Jehovah, that this house shall become what? A desolation. It shall become a desolation. And then we'll see in verses 6 through the following, we'll see the answer to our question. What would the nations hear as to the reason for Jerusalem being overthrown? And when you read that section, how did you answer that? Well, what would be notice the nations. And they're talking to one another as they come upon the scene, and Jerusalem, it's not that bustling city. It's kind of desolation and wilderness, kind of barren of people. Not what it could have been. So what will the nations be saying to themselves? Do they know why this all happened? Let's read it together. Many nations shall pass by this city, and they see it, and it says, and they shall say every man to his neighbor, wherefore hath Jehovah done this unto this great city? And then they shall answer. They got an answer. Because they forsook the covenant of Jehovah, their God, and worshiped other gods and served them. Really? Is that what pagan nations are going to say? God says so. It might take a while. Did a tornado come through here? Nebuchadnezzar, he came through here. Did he cause all of this? Yeah, he did. It was a tempest of Jehovah. So it wasn't a natural situation happening. But the situation, God is just saying, they will eventually understand. And they will know that this desolated city, Jerusalem, and where God's holiness was to be exonerated, they did not keep the covenant, the promise unto God. Very, very definite. This is the definite truth of why. And God said they're going to know why. And what happens is that we know why. It wasn't because their army was weak and they didn't put enough money into kind of strengthen their army. It's because they did not follow the teachings of God. And kings, you're in the focus of God. He'll speak about shepherds in chapter 23. He'll talk about false prophets. But right now, he's talking about the kings. And you're not riding into your gates of your city, Jerusalem, kings, on your chariots and horses. That's not happening. And now we know why. Now let's look at verse 6. For thus said Jehovah concerning the house of the king of Judah, thou art Gilead unto me, and the head of Lebanon. Now he's been speaking in prose, but this is dealing with poetic language. That we're saying, you're like Gilead unto me, and you're like Lebanon unto me. What was very important and prominent in those two areas? Up the north of Jerusalem, Lebanon. What's that? Cedar. Forest of Lebanon. And why was that important to the kings? Why had that happened with the kings? What was so important of that? Remember Solomon? 13 years to build his house. It was from the forest of Lebanon. And he said, well, he's not talking about the forest of Lebanon in this context, really? Let's notice as we look at the latter part of 6. Surely I will make thee a wilderness, and cities which are not inhabited, and I will prepare destroyers against thee. Every one hath his weapon, and they shall cut down the choice what? That's right, the choice cedars, and cast them in the fire. Why? Because the house of the kings were made of cedar. They got them from Lebanon. Even the armory had cedar in it. They had pictures that were painted with bright red vermilion along with the cedars. But Lebanon, you're just like Lebanon to me, and what's going to happen, I'm going to make you desolate. I'll make you desolate when I bring judgment upon your city. And the king's houses, their palaces, were being emphasized here. And if we just jump ahead, why would he say in verse 23, O inhabitant of Lebanon? that makest thy nest in the cedars. How greatly to be pitied shalt thou be when pangs come upon thee as pain of a woman in travail. And yet in verse 20 it says, go up to Lebanon and cry and lift up the voice to Bashan. That's truly Lebanon. But what he sees now, he says the inhabitant of Lebanon. Is he going to do judgment on Lebanon? No. Jerusalem is Lebanon in this context. Why? Because the cedars are so prominent from the forest of Lebanon. And I'm going to bring this city down, though it has its wonderful grandeur, palaces of the kings. I'm bringing your life down, kings. You are being the ones that have led the people to go away against God, and you should have stood up and done righteousness. So here we see that indeed these are the problems that will happen. Now let's get it back to the kings. Verse 10. Weep ye not for the dead, neither bemoan him, but weep sore for him that goeth away, for he shall return no more, nor see his native country. For thus saith Jehovah touching Shallum, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, who reigned instead of Josiah his father, who went forth out of this place. He shall not return thither any more, but in the place where they have led him to captive, there shall he die, and he shall see this land no more. So our question is, who is Shallum? Accent on the first. Some have it. I never see it on the last. I wish it was Shalom. That would be a pretty name. Shallum. Who is he? Jehoahaz. Jehoahaz. Which child is he of Josiah? First, second, third, fourth. Josiah had 4 of them. He's the fourth. And Johanan was the first, and Jehoiakim, number 2. Shallum was number 4, Jehoahaz, and he's mentioned here. And how many years did he reign? 3 months. Right? So why is he bringing him here? Well, who just died before he became king? Josiah, his father. Pharaoh Necho from Egypt had gone to do battle with Assyria. Babylon is on the warpath. And we're looking at 609 BC, around that time, and you've got this battle, and of course, he's going to fight the Egyptians. That's what Josiah was going to keep from happening there. And Pharaoh Necho, he killed him in Megiddo. He's dead. So who do the people place in his stead? As Shallum. Shallum, and he's the one that's been placed there. And Pharaoh Necho didn't have much patience with him. But apparently they put him in there because he's against Egypt too. But that didn't take very long to take place. Now, what Jeremiah said, let's make a comparison here. Who are you going to weep for? Dead Josiah or alive Shallum? What would he say we should do? Weep not for the dead. That's not hard to answer, was it? Shallum's not dead. He's taken off into Egypt. And the reason why his state is worse, he's never going to come back to see this land again. Josiah's not either. Well, he's dead. But this man's going to live. And from that standpoint, we reason with God, say, God, I'm with you. He's got to live and realize he's never coming back to that land again. And he only reigned 3 months, not very, very long. He was taken away, but his name is mentioned. And we know him with this name, but we know who he is. Jehoahaz, he wasn't there very long. And then we're going to have Jeconiah. We'll see that in verse 24. We have Jehoiakim. So all we're seeing about him, I will weep for the man who has to be away from this wonderful city and be away there for all of his life. Josiah is dead and gone. We'd probably weep for him. So, as we see to tie the kings now with oppression and who we should weep for, we have verses 10 through 19 that will help us understand that. And why should we weep for Shalom more than the dead one? Do I need to go over that again? Didn't think so. Describe the ways of King Joachim. And we take our text and we begin to see, well, I've got verse 13. It says, woe to him that builded his house with what? With unrighteousness, his chambers of injustice, who uses his neighbor's service without wages, and giveth him not his hire. Could you tell me what's going on there? Because he's going to apply it to a king. But woe to him that does that. And you say, I don't care who he is. That's wrong. Because you're treating your brother just like a what? Slave. I don't pay him any money. And yet, here is your house, your palace, your chambers, O king. And you don't even pay them their wages. And it saith, I will build me a wide house, spacious chambers, cutting them out of windows. It shall be sealed with what? Cedar. I wonder where they got that. Kings would get it from Lebanon. They're become a city like the forests of Lebanon, but they're going to be desolate. It's just going to be a wilderness, unlike Lebanon, where the trees grow. And painted with vermilion. Some of the chronicles from Nebuchadnezzar talked about they had pictures of the kings with that red vermilion on their walls. Shalt thou reign because thou strivest to excel in cedar? Is that what's going to keep you in power? Did not thy father eat and drink? Who was his father? Who was in his lineage? It's Josiah. Did not thy father eat and drink? See, you rode in chariots. You live a kingly life. Josiah did. But what was different? Josiah wanted what? Demanded it. Reform. And while they did not reform their heart as they should, they would revert back to what's happening here. But did thy father eat and drink and do justice and righteousness? Can you do both? But Joachim, you didn't do that. Then it was well with him. He could still eat and drink like a king. You could still ride in your chariots and horses. Pulled by horses. He judged the cause of the poor and needy. That's what Josiah did, but this king's not. Then it was well. Was not this to know me, saith Jehovah? But thine eyes and thy heart are but for what? Covetousness. I asked our young people Sunday night, what does the word covet means? What does it mean? Yeah, they said, I want. I thought it was pretty good. I want it. I want it. Our eyes are set upon that. But he says, that's what your heart is. And for shedding innocent blood, and for oppression, and for violence. Your eyes are set upon that, but what do? You do it. You shed innocent blood. You do not pay the workers. Whose picture is he painting? Therefore, thus said Jehovah concerning what king? It's not Shalom. It's not Josiah. He used Josiah as the other side of what it could have been. Who is it? Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. How long did he reign? 11 years. And Jeremiah's got a lot to do with him. But we get back to this, and he says, They shall not lament for him. Ah, brother, ah, sister. They shall not lament for him, saying, ah, Lord, or ah, his glory. What's going to happen to him? He shall be buried with the burial of a donkey, drawn and cast forth beyond the gates of Jerusalem. What about his death? What is that statement saying about his death? Let me just add a passage in 2 Kings where he is going to, 2 Kings 24:6, he slept with his fathers. He slept with his fathers, but he was drawn and cast beyond the gates of Jerusalem and had the burial of a donkey. So what is he saying to us there? What does he mean by that? Let's just add to it. Jeremiah's not through yet. Go to Jeremiah 36. And I think we can then say, what does this mean? I think we can be able to do this. In verse 30, he says, therefore thus saith Jehovah concerning Jehoiakim, king of Judah. He shall have none to sit upon the throne of David, and his dead body shall be cast out in the day to the heat, and in the night to the frost. Let's cast him out today in this 100-degree temperature. What's the thing's going to happen to his body? It won't be very good, will it? Outside of Jerusalem, that's what Jeremiah prophesies will happen. That kind of fits with the burial of a donkey. Drawn and cast forth beyond the gates of Jerusalem. And yet he slept with his fathers. Now the reason we're concerned with this because we know the Bible doesn't contradict itself. Jeremiah is a true prophet. And we've got to realize that as history is unfolding, what could have happened that his body was literally cast outside of Jerusalem with not much honor to it. Heat, take care of it. At the night, the frost will take care of it. Like a donkey, not a respectful burial. How could that be true? And then the phrase that sometimes means, I was buried like a king. I slept with my fathers. Maybe my body was buried in the sepulchres of the kings. What could have happened that says all of that is true? Is there anything that could have been? Let's get a time frame where you have Nebuchadnezzar coming. When Nebuchadnezzar came, and here is Jehoiakim. Was Jehoiakim dead or alive when Babylon came, when Nebuchadnezzar came in 606? And took away Jeconiah. 597 rather. Took away Jeconiah. Joachim's already dead. Nebuchadnezzar didn't do that. But we know how long he lived. How long? 11 years. Who killed him? Nebuchadnezzar did. No, he didn't. He's already dead because Jehoiachin, Jeconiah, is on the throne when he comes to the city and besieges it and takes Jeconiah away. Authors have said, and I just set this forth, well, what happened? And that could have been an assassination. There were people there that were pro-Chaldean and that sort of thing. And we know Jehoiakim in chapter 24, verse 1 of Kings, was already at odds with Nebuchadnezzar, revolting against him for 3 years because of the high taxes placed upon them. And Joachim was getting his own house built free, not being what's right. And they could have assassinated him and tossed his body out of the city. Slept with his fathers. Did they bury him finally? Don't know. But it was not a ceremonial end to a king's body. That could have happened. And yet the idea he died and maybe it was put back where the kings are, I don't know. Sleeping with his fathers, maybe he went to Sheol. He just died with his father. Very well could have been that. But I do think this event took place. And what helps me understand is the fact that he could have already been dead by some other means and treated that way, just like Jeremiah prophesied would happen. And later they might have buried what remains. I don't know. But I think all those, he's where the kings are, dead, but that wasn't very fine. Would there be a lot of people that would be mourning him? Well, would God say you should respect your rulers? What does he say on this occasion? Don't you? And I see the process happening. It says that they shall not lament for him, whether they should or should have. They won't. It won't be brother, and you might say, oh, brother, why did you have to die that way? But what about the sister? It could be these are my king, and you won't be saying that. They shall not lament for him, saying, "Ah, Lord, ah, his glory." They knew what kind of man he was. You think the fatherless and the widows and the sojourners and the people he used to build his great house full of cedar didn't pay him a dime? You think they miss him? They just cast him out. I think those things could have happened. And so he just be the barrel of a donkey drawn and cast forth beyond the gates of Jerusalem. Sin matters. Consequences of sin are there. And you think, well, he had the power. But when time is ended, what a horrible legacy left behind that we know about. We know what they did not respect him. And it should have been a good king like Josiah was. Yes, sir, David? That's right. So live a good life, and they won't do that at your funeral, I guess. What happened when God spoke to his people in prosperity? So now he takes it to the people. So let me lay the groundwork here, get our minds, think about a map, go up to Lebanon and cry. Now let's head northeast, lift up to the voice of Bashan, and cry from Abiram. Well, where am I going there? I'm going north Lebanon, literal Lebanon here. I'm going to the northeast, across the Jordan River to Bashan, and then I'm going to go where? What's significant about Abiram? That's kind of a mountainous range. What important mountain was in that section? Moses looked on the promised land from Mount what? Nebo. That's one of the mountains here in Abiram. So I'm going north, northeast, and I'm going south around the Dead Sea. And he says, for all thy lovers are destroyed. You're crying out. I spake unto thee in thy prosperity, and I answer our question, how'd that go? What does that say to you about prosperity? Well, God, thank you for supplying all these things, and we will serve you even better. What did we see in Deuteronomy that realized that it's kind of the nature of people? That what happens when they get rich? Who do they think got rich? Why? I got rich. And we leave what? Out of our thinking. We leave God out of our thinking. I spake to you in your prosperity. Who gave you that? I did. But you did not want to heed what I was having to say. That from thy youth you haven't obeyed my voice. So what does he mean here? The wind shall feed all thy shepherds. We're going to the king, and shepherds are leaders. Think about priests. And maybe prophets leading the way that she should go. But these are shepherds. They care for their flock, care for their people. What does it mean? Now, my Bible says the wind shall feed all thy shepherds. It's like shepherds are going to be sucking wind. That's what we're going to eat or going to have, just the wind. Or as some of the footnotes speak about, that it will like draw up it will just bring the wind will bring the shepherds together in a little group, and he's going to take them away. So if they're swallowing up that wind, they're going to be carried away, or the wind comes upon them. The wind shall feed all thy shepherds, and thy lovers shall go into captivity. Surely then shalt thou be ashamed and confounded for all thy wickedness. O inhabitant of Lebanon, which I think is meaning cedar-ridden Jerusalem, that makest thy nest in the cedars, in all your houses and chambers, how greatly to be pitied shalt thou be when the pains come upon thee, the pain as of a woman in travail. And of course, when there's the feminine side of things, where of course Jerusalem is looked upon as in a feminine sense as well. So he uses that illustration. It comes upon them. You can't avoid it. And that's going to happen. So he's just saying, cry at all these places around here. Here goes Jerusalem town. And it's going to come upon you. And the wind's going to, you shepherds are supposed to be overseeing the flock. It's just going to grab you up and take you into where? Captivity. That's where they're heading. Okay, so there's the destruction that's going to come upon them. Now, Jeconiah, we know him here as Coniah in verse 24. And we see the things he says about him. Does he mean here he'll have no sons? And is that what's going to take place with him? And we began to realize, well, he has 7 sons. 2 Chronicles 3, 17 through 18. He had 7 of them. And here is one that he doesn't last very long either. He's one of those ones at 3 months. As I live, said Jehovah, though Coniah the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, were the signet upon my right hand, yet would I pluck thee hence, and I will give thee unto the hand of him that seek thy life, in the hand of them whom thou art afraid, even in the hand of Nebuchadrezzar, which is Nebuchadnezzar, in the hand of the Chaldeans. And I will cast thee out, and thy mother that bare thee, into another country where ye were not born, and there ye shall die. But to the land whereof their soul longeth to return hither shall they not return. And that's something I would bemoan the man that has to live like that. Bemoan the person that died. We've seen that with Josiah earlier. And Shalom. Is this man Coniah a despised, broken vessel? Is he a vessel wherein none delighteth? Wherefore are they cast out, he and his seed, and are cast in the land which they know not? O earth, 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 hear the word of Jehovah. Thus saith Jehovah, write this man childless. Was he childless? A man that shall not prosper in his days. Yeah, because he had no children. That might be what I'm thinking. For no more shall a man of his seed prosper, sitting upon the throne of David and ruling where? In Judah. Did that literally happen? Yes. You can look, 2 Chronicles 3, 17, 18, find the next king. None of those 7 made it. Not that he would be childless, but he wouldn't have that lineage where you have your offspring becoming king as it would unfold, as it should. He will not have that. He's only there 3 months. But what do we know about this man? He's taken off into captivity. Okay. Nobody has read the last part of the book of Jeremiah? I thought you did that with all books. I go to the end. And if you did, you could answer my question. So what you all these chapters, I thought I want to go to the end and see what happens at the end. So you got my permission. Let's go. And Verse 31. Came to pass in the 7th and 30th year of the captivity of who? Jehoiachin. Who is that? That's Coniah. He only ruled 3 months. Fast forward. How old is he now? Because he became king when he's 18 years old. 37 plus 18 is what? This is good for your brain work. It's exercise. He's 55. He's a prisoner. And in the 12th month, in the 5th and 20th day of the month, that evil Merodach, the king of Babylon, in the first year of his reign, lifted up the head of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, and brought him forth out of the prison. They changed his clothes. And he was listed as the head king of all the kings they captured in Babylon. He has some respect for him. Maybe respect for his God. I don't know. And he spoke kindly to him and set his throne above the throne of the kings that were in captivity there in Babylon. They changed his prison garments, and Jehoiachin did eat bread before him continually all the days of his life. And for his allowance, there was a continual allowance given him by the king of Babylon every day, a portion, and the day of his death, all the days of his life. And you say, we're through with Jeremiah. That's it. That'll be the end. So here's one that doesn't rule very long. But he was evil. And he's in prison for all those years. And at the end, he's lifted up. And would you still mourn for him because he's never come back to his country? God said do that instead of those who have died. But I'm not so sure he's just better than nothing. But it's just a kind of an interesting way. But that's just one little king who it doesn't amount to much as far as ruling in Jerusalem. But Jeremiah is dealing with him, and this is what's happening to him. And I think the childless means he's not going to be blessed with children sitting and prospering on the throne like he would if he had been a good king. Because he did have 7. Does that mean he had 7 and he's not going to have any more? If that's the case, the 7 that he had didn't rule. And we're back to that point. Any comments you might have about that? Any suggestions over on that? Yeah. So, that's true. All right, question number 12. What did God promise to do for a scattered people? Now we enter into chapter 23, and he says, woe to the shepherds. What did they do? They destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture. So we're talking about scattering his people. And therefore, thus said Jehovah, the God of Israel, against the shepherds. What are shepherds supposed to do? They're to feed my people. But what did they do? They scattered the flock, drove them away, have not visited them, looked upon their needs. I will visit evil upon your doing, said Jehovah. And so they're going to experience the evil that they deserve, because what did they not do as shepherds? They took care of them. Visit means I'm overseeing your situation here. I'm going to make sure that you are led correctly. I'm going to make sure that you're fed. I'm going to make sure you're not distraught and scattered. You're going to have an understanding maybe of God's word. That would be very, very important. And that's what he's going to say when what happens is that in verse 3, I will gather the remnant of my flock. I'm going to bring them back to their land. They'll be fruitful and multiply. And then verse 4, I will set up shepherds over them. They will feed them. And they shall fear no more, nor be dismayed. Neither shall any be lacking, saith Jehovah. How does that help us when we think of our elders in the New Testament church? Men qualified, they're to serve as elders. Those are our pastors, aren't they? Preachers, not the pastor. You got pastors because they shepherd the flock. What is the shepherd supposed to do? These were religious leaders. What do the elders have to make the people be strong in a sense in the faith? What do they have at their disposal? It's the Word of God. They can make sure that they're taught not to be dismayed or have fear, especially dismayed when we're being conquered. And as we'll see, I know our time is short, and what we shall see, God gets in specifics. He'll talk about a burden real quickly. And we'll have to answer what that burden is, but a lot of it is if they say this. Here's the burden, and it didn't come from God. It came from themselves. God's upset with that. He said, I don't want you to say that anymore. And when you study, we've got chapters 23 through 25, when you see that, it just impressed me and said, well, that is kind of, all these things, they could be alike. Yeah, well, I have a dream. And I received a vision. And he'll hit that on the prophets. And it just hit me that a lot of people say, oh, well, we're led all right. But what are you led by? What do elders lead the church with? It's the Word of God. They're living it. They're extending it out to them. And that's what keeps us healthy flock, without fear, distraught. We know where we're heading. We know what we ought to know. That's the shepherd's work of that type of leadership. But here is that they did not offer what the people needed. They didn't present that to them. And one day that they will. Now, look at me in verse 5. Where does Jeremiah, this is going to happen in the future with the shepherds. What does verse 5 say? I will raise unto David a righteous branch. He shall reign as king and deal wisely. He'll execute justice and righteousness like kings should do. In his days Judah shall be saved, Israel shall dwell in safety, and this is his name whereby he shall be called Jehovah our righteousness. Who in the world is Jeremiah talking about, you think? Who fits all of that? Jesus Christ. And he would come. He's a branch of David. His gospel is where we find the righteousness of God. He's going to lead the people. He's going to give them what they have. And shepherds that fill in the capacity as they should will be bringing that to their attention as shepherds. Any comments or questions you might have? All right, our time is up, and Lord willing, we'll begin get on question. I want to deal with that one. Question number 13. We'll deal with that, Lord willing, next time. Thank you.